A very good afternoon, dear friends. And it's a pleasure seeing my lifetime friend Sridhar around. He was the one who proposed that I should become Endocrine Society's president, not that I wanted. He and Prasanna Kumar.
Yeah, sir.
And a lot of water has fallen down the Ganges since then. We're talking about a very fascinating topic this afternoon for the next 15 minutes. Gut microbiota in type 2 diabetes mellitus. And one could never visualize the amount of data that is available today, that there is some reasonable relevance in looking at this particular aspect of, you can't believe it. If you look at human gut, 100 trillion bacteria are harbored in our gut. And the amount of genome, that is many times all of us. And it has evolved over a period of millennia to create a symbiotic relationship between human beings and these microorganisms. And it's not only happening in human beings. This symbiotic relationship has helped survival of both these microbes as well as the human beings during the past many millennia. This is a review article that I came across in Microbiology and Molecular Reviews. It's a rather recent one. It's looking at how the gut gets colonized by different bacteria. And if you look at it, just if you look within the womb, gut is totally sterile till delivery occurs. The moment delivery occurs, through nares, through oral mucosa, through skin, so gastrointestinal tract, the environmental bacteria start going in. And the usual bacteria that you would find out are actinobacteria, Bacteroides, Firmicutes, and many other bacteria have been, and I just told you that 110 trillion quantification about that. And what is important is that from that complete sterile state to full colonization occurs in the first year of life. And by the fourth year of life, you have the gut microbiome as good as you would expect in any adult. And unless this gut microbiome is interfered with, fiddled with, it will not change for next 7-8 decades. And we know there are many environmental things, particularly collateral sicknesses, overuse of antibiotics, that is a potential of changing this gut microbiome. The data shows that this gut microbiome is extremely important for maintaining the structural architecture of gut mucosa. And it also regulates the permeability of the gut and has some immune function, synthesize certain substances which are essential for our survival. All of us know that there are certain essential substances, certain essential amino acids, dietary fats which help in absorption of vitamins. Many of these things are actually synthesized by these colonized bacteria in the gut. By any chance, gut gets colonized by abnormal bacteria, the ones that it is not acclimatized to over the last many million years, the ones that have not developed a symbiotic relationship. This is known as dysbiosis. A lot of data has recently emerged that whatever epidemic of diabetes we are seeing, we see many times that this epidemic is pari passu with fast food that has come up, the economic affluence getting onto the cars more often than getting on foot. But there's some data also available that whether it is related to food choices that we now exercise or the drugs that we use, particularly antibiotics, that this dysbiosis occurs. And some data shows that this is connected to the current epidemic of non-communicable diseases in terms of so-called quote-unquote lifestyle disease, type 2 diabetes mellitus, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cardiovascular disease, and cancers. Huge data available in the comparative endocrinology and animal world. It shows that healthy gut microbe helps maintain, as I said earlier on, intestinal upregulation and increased phosphorylation of. There are certain key tight junctions in the proteins that I will show you in a pictorial form in a couple of minutes. And if this gut microbiome gets disturbed, those junctions get sick. And once this microbiome becomes dysbiotic, this permeability of the gut is one thing that gets impacted. And once this gut permeability is increased, which is not desired, undesired, certain substances that originate from abnormal bacteria. One example is, let's say, wall component of gram-negative bacteria, lipopolysaccharide-like substances. They gain access to the intravascular compartment. And once this substance and substances like this go into the intravascular compartment, they have the potential of acting on hepatocytes. They have the potential of acting on adipocytes. They have the potential of acting on myocytes, and can alter the basic behavior of insulin receptor. This is again, review on gestational diabetes. See, just look at it. Here, this picture, I loved it. Look at it. If you alter your food, particularly, if it's a natural foods, better. But if the pathogens within the gut are disturbed, on the slide on the left side extreme, you see those tight junctions. Some of these substances that originate from these abnormal bacteria can disturb these tight junctions. So many molecules have been identified from these bacteria. As I showed, lipopolysaccharide cytosol shows, pathobionts, many other zonulins, and a huge number of names have been given to these cell wall or intranuclear products that have the potential of disrupting this permeability. And once these tight junctions are gone, some of those chemical substances that originate from these abnormal bacteria can creep in and have a potential of impacting, as I said, different cell lines. And the same chemical factors have been shown to impact the areas that we usually associate with insulin resistance: adipocyte, myocyte, hepatocyte. And also in adipocytes have been shown to increase interleukin 1b, interleukin 6, TNF-alpha. And again, these are the substances that increase in an inflammatory state. And many people, this inflammatory in adipocytes call it as adiposopathy. Where, many times we say that many of these non-communicable diseases may have a component in chronic low-grade inflammation. And this is one of the ways in which, like we say, initially we used to talk about a triad that gives rise to diabetes, ominous octet, dirty dozen, so many mechanisms. And this is one important mechanism that has been shown to probably connect all these non-communicable diseases. In summary, in this cartoon, if a person has a genetic predisposition, a bad quality diet, bad quality drugs, microbiome gets dysbiosis, the abnormal ones, they impact those adipocytes, create a pro-inflammatory state, and change the gut barrier. And then this results in what is now known as metabolic endotoxemia. And this has been shown to give rise to different forms of insulin resistance. Many ways people have tried, huge number of mechanisms of intervening to take care of this dysbiosis: dietary modifications, prebiotics and probiotics, antibiotics. Surprisingly, metformin has been shown to normalize the gut microbes. Metformin continues to elude us, and for metformin has been used now, in fact, discovered 100 years back in 2020, but has been in clinical use for 60 years at least in our country, even though in the Western world it became available in mid-90s only, after that scare of lactic acidosis. Fecal transplants with normal microbes have been tried, huge amount of data there. And bariatric surgery has been shown to alter the gut microbes more towards the normality, and even that may be responsible for reducing some amount of insulin resistance. Many diets, placed on either a fat or carbohydrate restricted diet have shown that bacteroides increase and firmicutes decrease, and sort of normalizing the gut, not getting into, because of the shortage of the time. Huge relationship found between, as I was just now alluding to, gut microbes and metformin. The metformin consumption normal, huge mechanism, as I told you earlier on. It would need a 30-40 minutes talk to elaborate on that, perfectly working on those junctions between the mucosal cells, that how different substances that come from the abnormal or the sick microbe that have a potential of gaining access to the intravascular compartment. And not only that, there are some suggestions that these may also be, these substances that gain access to the intravascular compartment may have a potential of initiating or aggravating the complications related to diabetes mellitus, particularly both macrovascular complications. The huge review recently published in that, and mechanism is also elaborated. And in fact, the exact proteins or protein-like substances identified which have an impact of acting on the kidney, acting on the eyes, acting on the endothelial wall. And these pathophysiological mechanisms explained in a very beautiful but a rather tedious way. I could find out 6 randomized control trials, where people tried to give probiotics and see the impact on diabetes mellitus in patients, so they're normalizing it. But I think a major trial still has not been done. Antibiotics, where the abnormal bacteria could be taken care of and normalize it. As I said, fecal transplant, a huge amount of data. I was really amazed to find out fecal transplants via gastrointestinal tube from lean donors into obese people with metabolic syndrome, how it was shown in a sizable number of people to reduce insulin resistance and obesity. Bariatric surgery has been shown to lead to many important physiological alterations, including both short and long-term changes in gut microbiota composition. So in conclusion, I would say there's progressively mounting evidence, and mostly from the animal world and few from the human studies, support that gut microbiota can influence host health and disease. Modulation of this gut microbiota, its composition and function, has the capacity to alter host metabolic profile in a desirable, favorable fashion if we understand it better. And this is an area where we can develop a new therapeutic interventions to take care of diabetes in a relatively more innocuous way. Thank you so much. I can understand 15 minutes is a relatively short time, so I had to rush through it. Thank you so much.